Hey dickheads, wanna see the costume I made for the big Halloween video?
Dude, Halloween was like a week ago. You're a bit late to the party, you dumbass.
Yeah, did you not get the memo? That was my fault. I sort of was getting ready to do a big Halloween video, and then I didn't feel very well, so I sort of didn't. But if you've gone to the effort of making a costume and everything, we might as well see it.
Nice. Okay, here we go. Ta-da, scary as fuck, eh?
Anyway, speaking of dumb racism, check this shit out.
So there is a growing trend in America of implementing metal detectors and other forms of checking students like wanding and things like that when they enter schools in an effort or in a facade of trying to make schools more safe. But what turns out is that oftentimes these sorts of measures that are implemented in schools actually are pretty racist.
Oh, for fuck's sakes. Hello slimy fertilers, and we're back again with a video here from Think Tank. And Think Tank is a bit of a strange one. What they do is they take two sort of random people, I don't know whether they're staffers or whatever, that work for them, and stick them in the Think Tank studio and then get them to talk about random things, mostly concerning, your sort of social justice-y, racism kind of thing. And this time round, they believe that they have figured out that metal detectors are racist. Which, yeah, okay, let's let them dig their own grave.
And have a disproportionate effect on students of color. Now, schools with a preponderance of students of color within the school building are actually more inclined to adopt strict surveillance practices, metal detectors, locked gates, security cameras, random sweeps, and school police.
That's probably because, on average, areas in the US with a high population of black people tend also to be areas where a disproportionate amount of violent crime is committed.
And a lot of that crime tends to be gang or drug related. You know, the sort of things which tend to attract young men, because they offer a kind of a sense of family and group acceptance. That's not to say that white people don't become involved in the same things, but they tend to be less highly represented in the arrest or victim statistics than black people do.
Now, there was a professor at the University of Florida Law School that wanted to sort of look into this and how this affected students of color, and if there was that correlation that I am talking about, right? Now, the study suggests that as the portion of students of color in the school increased, so did the odds that the school would rely on more intense surveillance methods. Okay, so in schools where students of color accounted for more than half of the student body, the probability of the school using a mix of metal detectors, school police and security guards, locked gates, and random sweeps was 2 to 18 times greater than at schools where the non-white population was less than 20%.
Well, let's face it, I mean, when you've got crime statistics that say in areas with a higher population of black people, more violent crime tends to occur. Of course, you are going to want to have the highest and best security measures available to you to ensure that somebody doesn't wander into the school one day and start shooting the fuck out of everybody over, some sort of gang turf war, or, or somebody, disrespecting somebody or something like that. And the same thing as you don't want people wandering into school with knives and things and killing other students. What they forget to mention here is that while they're going on and on and on about students of colour this, students of colour that, these same measures also affect, the white students. I mean, let's face it, when they say students of colour, what they actually mean is black. They couldn't care less about, people of sort of, Oriental, Asian origins and things like that. They're only interested in the black man. And when you've got, sort of majority black gangs and drug dealers and stuff like that are, killing people in turf wars or whatever, schools are going to naturally be a lot more cautious, because the last thing a school needs is to have yet another school shooting, plastered all over the papers. And when they say that, school shooters tend to be white people, yeah, that kind of sort of psycho school shooter does. But there have been instances where members of gangs who are actually students at schools have taken weapons onto school premises, or somehow managed to get weapons onto school premises and use them to kill other students. It's not uncommon, it's not unheard of either. So school shootings are still the same, no matter whether, a gang member kills another gang member, or whether an idiot, empties out an assault rifle or a shotgun into a crowd of people.
Okay, and this is even controlling for a host of other variables that might explain the presence of stricter student surveillance, like school crime, neighborhood crime, school disorder, like disciplinary or behavioral problems on campus, and other student demographics and school characteristics. All right, so the overwhelming majority, some 62% of the occurrences of major school violence actually happened in schools that serve primarily white students.
Now here's the thing, I actually hunted down the article that they're quoting that was printed in the Atlantic. I will include a link to it below. And the bit there that they've just quoted does indeed appear in the article there, and it does have links, or prior to this statement being made, it does have link to what it calls, federal data on the demographics of relevant schools. Unfortunately, this link, which I presume is to cite sources, just leads to a search page. However, a link that's placed directly before it for the CNN archives, in fact, just has an article from September the 17th on CNN, which makes the assertions about white schools being more dangerous and stuff like that, and perhaps they are. However, it doesn't provide anything by way of statistics or anything like that, just a series of, nice pictures of students crying after school shootings and stuff like that, and police and everything. But it doesn't actually provide anything. But in the same article, it does in fact state that this information that they are using to compile this article, which was indeed published on September the 12th, 2016, I might add, even though this video is only about a few weeks old at the point of recording. The actual study they're citing is from December 2012. So not only are the figures out of date, the sort of updated figures are also either non-existent or just based on CNN news reports. It's a nice bit of cherry picking in action we've got going off here.
So there's not even like a correlation of like, oh, there's more crime in this neighborhood, or there's more crime at this school, so let's implement this. It's just based on the fact that these students are of color, right? And so that's stereotyping, and actually has really, really negative effects on the students, right?
Well, if following the assertion that majority white schools have more violence is true, then the people most affected by having to pass through metal detectors, be searched or subjected to pat-downs and so on, would in fact be white people. Having seen the entrances to schools in the US, everyone has to step through the metal detector arches, and anyone who sets it off is pulled aside to be searched, and anything that could be used as a weapon is confiscated. The metal detectors don't scan for ethnicity, so to make the assertion that these particular security measures disproportionately affect the black peoples is not only ludicrous, it's retarded, being as anyone can carry a knife or a gun, regardless of skin color.
There's really no evidence that this kind of intensive surveillance and policing creates an academic environment where students are more likely to thrive, or improves the school culture and climate, or creates a safer learning environment. Yet cities, states, and federal government continue to invest in these kinds of strategies, and the only results that we see is the criminalization of black youth in their schools.
The article snippets she's reading fail to mention that the same security measures also stop people wandering in off the street with firearms, bombs or edged weapons, and having themselves a bit of a good old bloodbath. Or does she think that that would be a good idea? Besides, if students don't bring weapons onto the premises, then they have nothing to fear from being stopped and searched. Neither do they have to fear being criminalized, as none of them will be arrested or detained if they aren't actually carrying an offensive weapon, unless of course you want to make the assertion that security personnel are just rounding up all the black kids and throwing them in the slammer because they are black. in which case you're going to have to provide some pretty hefty evidence to back that shit up.
And this is what I really want to get into in this discussion, right? Is that when you are going through a metal detector on your way to school, when you are being wanded or having police search you, when you are walking into school, not only does it delay the education process, right? There's many reports of students being late to class or late to tests because they have to go through these metal detectors and slower processes and things like that.
Oh, poor babies. I mean, yeah, get rid of all the metal detectors and the security guards and police and whatnot, and just let people wander into schools with, you know, fucking pistols chucked into the, you know, tucked into the belts, or shotguns hidden in the sports bags and whatever, and knives and stuff like that. Just let them do it, you know, because if they get to lessons on time, that's fine, because that means then that, you know, they can get to lessons on time and then shoot each other, and, you know, that's just great. I mean, look, you have to do all this stuff when you go to a fucking airport. And yeah, that can lead to you being, you know, a bit late for, you know, flights and stuff like that. But that's the idea of getting there early and going through the check-in process a bit earlier. You know, if school starts at 9 o'clock and you know that it takes, you know, 10 minutes or so to get through the, you know, security process, then instead of turning up at, you know, 2 minutes to fucking 9, you turn up at 8:30. That way then you can get in, get the security things out the way, go to, you know, wherever your lessons are, sit down, get your shit together, and then get on with the process of learning, which is what you're supposed to do at fucking school. I mean, here in Britain, well, when I were a lad, and that's, you know, making myself sound fucking old, but I am old anyway, so I'm there. When I was at school, we didn't have any kind of thingy, you know, kids would just turn up at school and just go in, and that's it. There were no searchers, no, you know, security doors to go through or anything like that. But events over the past couple of years or so, I mean, for example, I was still at school when the Dunblane massacre occurred, and after that occurred, schools started implementing security measures. You know, schools in this country started implementing security measures, such as making it so that there was only one entranceway to the school. You know, if visitors were coming, well, basically, if anybody came to the school, they could only go in one way, and then there was a staff entrance, which you needed a special key to get through. Other than that, you weren't getting inside the school unless you used some sort of fucking battering ram or something like that. Nowadays, from what I gather, children are fingerprint scanned, and the, you know, automatic computer systems tell the, you know, the school office if certain students haven't turned up for lessons, you know, if they've gone off to play truant or whatever, or if they just forget to, you know, scan in when they get to lessons. They, you know, immediately somebody comes and checks to make sure if they are in lessons or not, and then if they're not, they ring the parents to find out where they are and stuff like that. I think some schools have adopted, you know, kind of metal detectors and stuff like that on the entrances, mainly schools in kind of problem crime areas, which is sort of the same as what happened in the US. I mean, all these, what they call it, all these security measures have been brought in both to try and stop school shootings and to stop sort of gang-related activity in schools, which is basically what's happened here. They've, you know, we don't tend not to have school shootings in this country, being as that firearms aren't available, but we still have plenty of people turning up to school with, you know, weapons, you know, not particularly guns, but, you know, knives and stuff like that. We also get people turning up to school with drugs, and you know, fights, and people can get hurt in school premises over fights over things, you know, drugs and, you know, gangs and stuff like that. You know, gone are the days when, you know, school fights started because, you know, little Billy called little Johnny a poopy pants or whatever. You know, fights tend to be more over fucking somebody selling weed at, you know, cheaper prices than what little, you know, little Johnny sells weed at a tenner a bag and little Billy sells it at a fiver a bag, you know, so cutting on other people's turf, shit like that, it's fucking pathetic.
But also, when you are treated like a criminal...
You know, also, just before I bring this video to an end, because the rest of the video is just whinging and virtue signalling, but if you notice throughout the video, the you know, this white blonde woman, I don't even remember her name. It did give her a name at the beginning of the video, and I just really don't fucking care, to be honest, what her name is. But this black woman here has basically spent the entire video just sat there looking bored, and you know, and occasionally going like, yeah, right, okay, and you know, this is basically a video in which they're trying to get across the point that you know, black people are being unfairly treated by, you know, the white patriarchy or whatever they want to call it. And yet they have a white woman on who's just talking and gesticulating wildly while a black woman just sits looking meek and bored and talked over in the background. You know, it really doesn't kind of send the right kind of message out, I don't think. You know, it just proves that this video is literally nothing more than white-splaining. You know, they won't even let the black woman have her say on it. You know, you never know, she might not even agree with half of the fucking points that's being made, but obviously she's not allowed to raise any kind of concerns about things that are being said here and everything like that. That's it now. I'm not doing it anymore. Link to the full video is down the bottom, along with a link to the article from the Atlantic, which they've based this entire video on. Well, cherry-picked to base the entire video. And I'd love to know whether Think Tank actually produces scripts for their pundits to read from, or whether the material that's being presented is spontaneous. I'm guessing it's scripts. Basically, somebody else writes the scripts, and then they bring people in to to read them out and make the points that they want to make. And I have noticed from watching quite a few other Think Tank videos where they bring in and let's face it, the black woman here is pretty much a token black person. They bring in the black people, and then, you know, the black people tend to kind of sit quietly in the background while the white knight or white knightess or whatever, you know, virtue signals and gesticulates to prove that she's a good ally to the black peoples or whatever. So yeah, right. Social media contacts up on screen. If you feel generous, you may also donate via my PayPal. I could really use the money. I could always really use the money. At the moment, any donations will be going towards living expenses and a few bills that I need to pay that, I'm having to juggle the old budget around to try and get them. So any donations are received with thanks, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.